Hey everyone, Lachie here for OTB Marine. As you might be able to tell, this video is going to be on the F-ONE Monobloc Tails. I've been super fortunate to be able to test these out over the last month. I've been riding both ends of the spectrum in terms of foils. I've had the Skate 550, just moved down to that from the Eagle 690, and then I've started up downwind journey with the 7Cs 1500. So I couldn't get more far apart with which foils I've chosen, but super stoked to have been testing these tails out with two different awesome foils. And it's been a really cool learning experience to try and isolate what the differences are with these tails. What's in front of me is sort of what I've been testing the most. I started on the downwind 190, then had to play with the downwind 145, jumped across to the carving W 141, and also the carving 160. So I've had to play with the carving range and the carving W range, which has been a bit of fun. And then visited the downwind 170 for a bit. These tails all have really interesting characteristics. It's just been really cool to see how much difference you can get out of your foil by changing quite a small component of the setup. So the F-ONE Monobloc Tails are unique in the sense that your fuse length is baked into which tail you choose, as opposed to sort of having the fuse length that you're used to and then just chucking different sized tails on that fuse length. I think this is a really interesting move from F-ONE because it puts them a little bit separate to the rest of the market, but I can see exactly why they've done it after testing out of these different ones. They are chasing certain feelings with certain tail wings. It gives you so much of a range without having to fry your brain trying to choose which tail with which fuselage, but oh, maybe today this one would have been better. And you know, it's really like you can have 1, 2 different tail wings and get a really wide range of experiences and get the most out of your front wing. I wanted to chat about the experiences that I've had with certain tail wings. So we'll kick it off with the one that I started with, which was the 190. It's not necessarily the one that F-ONE tells you to pair the Skate 550 with, but it was one that I was familiar with coming from some of the other foils that I've ridden. The larger Eagles, the 890, the 790, had to play with some of the Phantoms as well. And yeah, now onto the Skate. So I brought that through with me for a bit of familiarity. So the 190 is a triple extra short, and the way F-ONE system works is just a little bit confusing. You start at extra short and then your shortest fuse is your triple extra short, which is I think it's a carryover from their non-monobloc tails where they did have like a short tail, but from designing foils over years, they've figured out that these are the sizes that they want to go with, and sort of carried through that legacy name. Yeah, so that 190 is really familiar. It's really stable on that roll axis. You have roll when you want roll, but it doesn't feel unstable. It doesn't feel super radical. It's a really great tail for learning things, and I'm really dialed in on this one in terms of foot switching. From that, I went to the 141 carving W, and I really should just have this up on the table, but anyway, the carving 160 as well. I'll quickly touch on the difference between the carving W versus the carving. The carving has these gates on the tails. They're there to reduce induced drag, which is as you generate more lift by going faster, you also induce more drag. Those gates will help to reduce that. There's a lot more engineering and sciencey stuff behind that, but we'll save that for the engineers and the scientists. So yeah, jumped on the 141 carving W. It really unlocked that roll axis. It's an extra short, so this is the shortest fuse on the 190, and that is technically the longest fuse in the monobloc range. And it felt super like playful on the roll axis. The balance was quite nice. Front foot, back foot pressure felt familiar to the 190, maybe a little bit less front foot pressure, but not as significant of a jump as I thought it would be, you know, being that, 49 square centimeters difference. An interesting thing to consider is as you go longer fuse, you sort of gain some pitch stability. And as you go down in tail wing size, you lose pitch stability. They've sort of cancelled each other out a little bit. With the design of this tail, being not as wide in the span direction, so not as wide from tip to tip, and a bit more anhedral, which is, you know, negative dihedral, sort of the wingtips pointing down like that. It loves to roll, and it is really fun to carve in. Already from just changing a tail wing, I've had two pretty wildly different experiences with the same foil, which is really cool. Sounds super obvious, but it's also just, sometimes you just need to hear something to sort of spur your imagination and then head down the path of having a play. Would recommend, if you've been riding a downwind tail, check out the carving line. It might unlock some completely new characteristics in a foil that you already have. Interesting thing about the carving 160, although that, you know, they're sort of the same range, being both carving tails, this one being carving and that one being carving W, wing specific. This carving range is more back foot pressured. It's really designed around surf, not as much for that top end speed, more for really pushing the agility of the foil whilst trying to maintain flow through some really sharp turns. So really playful, the 160. Also another one, if you're a winger that also prone surfs, that's a really great option. Yeah, then jump to the downwind 145. So I just wanted to see from here, from the carving range to the downwind range at a similar size was the sort of comparison there. The 141 and the 145 having the same fuse length really just isolated that variable of carving range to downwind range, and it just reinforced the fact that the carving W has so much roll, the carving has so much roll, and the downwind tail is just stable and nice. Really great tail wing for those sort of flat water conditions. I mean, I ride this in chop and waves and stuff as well. I wouldn't be upset if I got caught out in the bay waves with this tail. Just wouldn't have quite as much roll as the carving W. Cool, and then I think the last one I visited was this 170. It was sort of down the middle of everything, so I kind of wanted to get to both ends before I went down the middle just to, you know, see what would happen. And it was as expected. It's a double extra short, so it's in the middle between the longest and the shortest. Fuse length and size-wise, it's somewhere in the middle, so it was a great all-rounder. Did everything that I wanted it to do. So aside from that, just wanted to quickly point you to some little resources on F-ONE's website. They have a how to choose your monobloc tail resource. They've sort of labeled it from dock start to downwind to all round to surf. All round sort of being your winging, downwind for downwinding, dock starting, surf for surf. In saying that, pretty much all these tails work really well for winging. Obviously I haven't tested out the pump range, but tested out downwind, carving W and carving, all really great tails. And then they also have like the recommendations for which tail wing goes with which front wing. I ventured outside of this chart a little bit and still had a whole bunch of fun and had like the foils still feel really amazing. So don't be afraid to venture outside this just because it says it on the page. But if you're looking for a starting point, this is a great starting point. So yeah, head over to this page on F-ONE's website to check it out. And then if you head to the foils section of our website, otbmarine.com.au, you'll see the full range of F-ONE foils up there, ready for you to add to your cart and get exploring. I really think that if you haven't considered playing around with tail wings yet, have a think about it. You'll be surprised with how much range and what different characteristics you can get out of your foil. There is a whole world of tails to explore, and I think the beautiful thing about the F-ONE range is there's enough for you to go out and have adventures and explore different characteristics with, but you're not going to get brain fried from too much choice. Cool, that is it for me on the F-ONE Monobloc Tails. I hope that gives you a little bit more of an insight into what you should be looking into or what you could potentially get out of a different tail wing. I've been having a whole bunch of fun testing these out, so I would really recommend having a play with a few different tail wings and finding out what works best for your riding style. Awesome, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.